Do you have faith in Trent Baalke? If you don't, you're going to need it. We'll talk about that here on Locked On Jaguars.
You are Locked On Jaguars, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is happening, good people? Thank you for joining me, Tony Wiggins, the host of the Locked On Jaguars podcast. We're at your team every day, and we thank you for making us your first listen, reminding you that we're also free on all platforms. Wherever you get your podcasts, you have us right there, and you don't have to pay for it. That's right, because we're free on all platforms. Good to see you guys today, new people. What's happening? Welcome to the Locked On Jaguars podcast. I'm Tony Wiggins. I've covered the team for 13 and a half years now professionally, but ever since their inception, I've been here all my life because I'm a Jacksonville native, and I'd like to think that I have a little bit of a pulse on the franchise as a whole. So let's get to it. We're going to talk Trent Baalke today, and we're talking about Trent Baalke based on, it's either Baalke or Baalke. I kept hearing people say his name yesterday on NFL Network, and 50% of the folks said Baalke, 50% said Baalke. Baalke is easier for me, so I'm going to say it. One day I'll ask him the absolute proper way to say his name. But he is the man of the hour today on the podcast for this reason. One, he's the GM of the Jaguars. Two, we've spent so much time talking about Trevor Lawrence and Doug Pederson and that duo and how important it is to have those elements and those specific people and those individuals in charge of this franchise. I did speak about at the end of the year how this needs to be more of a Doug Pederson influenced and team from this point forward, about how much trust I have in Doug. Well, apparently Doug has a lot of trust in Trent Baalke. Both guys spoke yesterday at the Combine. We'll have more of those comments later on in the week as we move forward. However, the one that I was stuck on, and I talked about this yesterday, was, and this is something that I'm going to set this up real quick, so bear with me. When fans, very smart fans, I will add, the Jaguars fan base, they can be a little wild sometimes, but for the most part, they ask educated questions and they make educated statements when they're not being emotional, but that's nothing new to fandom. But the Jaguars fans said that one of the things that they wanted to do was improve this and improve that. And the question I always asked them was, okay, how do we manage to do that? And then when you suggest trading or getting rid of, or not getting rid of, I hate the way that sounds, but trading or moving on and making business decisions for certain players, it's like, no. So the thing is it's almost this is the football version of hoarders, right? Meaning you always want to find something new. I used to watch this show and I didn't, for the life of me, understand the disease that people had that allowed them to just collect all of this stuff to the point where it was just all over the place, right? And I actually found out that I went through this with my great-grandmother. That my great-grandmother, my family went over and cleaned out the family home that we used to own, that we all grew up in. And to give you a hint, it's a 3-bedroom, right? And there were, at any given time, 18 people living in there. That's a whole nother story over off Avenue B here in Jacksonville. But I didn't know it was crowded. You just never know, right? But the point is that she collected stuff over like a 40-year period. And one day, all my mom and my aunts and uncles, they went over and they cleaned everything. And she was sitting there just watching TV and mumbling and stuff and saying, you guys are on a trip. And they loaded everything out on the curb and they left and the house was spotless. Well, they got a phone call from one of the neighbors that said, y'all grandma just put everything back in the house. And I'm laughing because I know how spunky she was, right? Now, let's get to Jaguar fans. Y'all are spunky too. Jaguar fans want a bunch of help. They want a bunch of new stuff. But They don't want you to throw out none of the old stuff in order to make room for the new stuff, right? And they'll cut you if you talk about moving certain people. And anybody can cut a bad player or move on from a so-so player. But if a player is above average or just okay, no, you can't get rid of it. Well, how are we going to get better? Right. And so once I got that point, and then I saw the way free agency was going, I came to the conclusion that yesterday, here's what they're going to do. They ain't spending a whole bunch of money in free agency. They're going to draft, they're going to develop, they're going to retain their own guys. And that's easy to do when you have a franchise quarterback. So getting into today's show, I'm going to tell you that so far with the drafting in the last 2 years, it's so far so good with Trent Baalke, but now the stakes are higher and the mistakes are more unforgiving. Why? It's because the Jags made a big step from picking first to picking 24th. To go from picking 24th to 32nd is huge. That is a large step, even though it looks about that big. Well, we were right on the goal line against the team that won the Super Bowl, and we threw a pick and we could have trimmed it to 3. And then we got the ball back again, and they just made a great pick. So we're not far off. Let me tell you something. That not far off is farther than you think it is to make that little jump. And I'm going to give you some examples of that. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to set this up, and I'm going to find out. I'm going to ask this question eventually. Do you guys have faith in Trent Baalke that he can get us to that next step? And by us, I mean us as a community, the Jacksonville Jaguars. It's not as easy as it sounds, but you're going to depend a lot on him. And when I'm talking about him, I'm talking about the entity that is Trent Baalke, not just the GM, not just the singular person, but the program, the staff, the pro personnel department that he's responsible of, the scouting department, all of that stuff, and all of those people falls on Trent Baalke. I'll tell you why that's such a big question is because I heard in succession yesterday, Trent Baalke talked to the NFL Network, and then the very next person was Brett Veach for the Kansas City Chiefs, and it just sounded totally different. One guy sounded like he was hoping and wishing. The other guy sounded like he knows exactly what he was talking about. I'm going to give you a hint and a clue to all of that stuff, and we'll do it in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars. First, I have to let you know about today's sponsor, and that is FanDuel. And I've been dying to say that for a couple of years now because FanDuel is the absolute truth, and it is the best and the number one sports book in the absolute world. That's right. You got to download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, and it's super, super easy. We're at the beyond midway point of the NBA season, and there's always a way for you to get paid. New customers at FanDuel get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's right. Bonus back if your first bet doesn't win. You think I'm joking? I'm not. Try it. Go download the app. They ain't playing with you at FanDuel. Kevin Durant makes his debut tonight in Phoenix. You get all the information and everything you need in order to make the right selection. FanDuel even lets you combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with a same game parlay. So don't miss the chance to get your no sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/locked on. That's FanDuel.com/locked on to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. And you are with me, T-double-I-G-G. That's right, T-Wig is my nickname, and this is the Locked On Jaguars podcast, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast. We're at your team every day, and we thank you for making us your first listen. All right, so I listened to Trent Baalke do an interview, and I hope I don't start doing that, like correcting myself every time I say his name or trying to be so correct about his name that I say it in a way that I'm not comfortable with. Anyway, I heard him yesterday talking about the Jaguars, and I like what I heard. Trent didn't sound, it didn't sound like he didn't know what he was doing. In fact, it was really team building 101 and football 101 because he said we're going to build through the draft. And we've heard that so much. We're going to build through the draft and we're going to supplement in free agency in the days of, and I'm paraphrasing, but the days of the Jaguars being big spenders in free agency is over. All right. So that's easy to say when you've been a big spender last year, right? They really shot. When I tell you they unloaded everything last year with their cap space, and what they did was build a bunch of infrastructure. And I think that's what had everybody perplexed. Is it seems like what the Jaguars did was they went quantity. As it turns out, they actually got quality 2 years in a row. They got some good quality on this team. Now, there were some misses, not necessarily terrible misses, but misses nonetheless. I would say Shaq Griffin has been a miss. And I would say so far, Foley Fadukazi hasn't necessarily been great, right? Trading up for Devin Lloyd, at one point, it looked like, at one point early last year, Devin Lloyd was leading the charge for Rookie of the Year. He actually looked like he was going to be all pro. And then all of a sudden, the thing that happens in the NFL, what happens? People get tape on you and then they start making you do stuff that you ain't comfortable doing. And they seem like they did it all year to him. And then he was battling a hamstring injury and he got off to a late charge. So some of that stuff is a little bit forgivable when it comes to Trent. But here's the thing. I heard those two talk yesterday. And it doesn't mean that, well, I'm going to say this. It doesn't mean that Veach is better at what he does. He probably is. But I think Brett Veach is in a different position where he can articulate more stuff. And he even talked about their running back, Isaiah Pacheco, and how they came up. Like they knew he was a very good player, right? And he talked about these stacks. And what I assume he means by stacks is you have a first round stack of names and files, and you have a second and third round, or maybe a day 2 stack of files, and then some fourth round guy. And so they prioritize them. It sounds like they prioritize them in different ways, right? And the thing that they had about Pacheco was the level of competition and the unknown, but they knew he ran really hard. But then they evaluated him at the Senior Bowl and they said, no, he can do it. And then they did their own workout and they said, no, he can catch. So the question was his level of competition and could he catch and pass protect? They answered those questions in a private workout and then still took the chance that he was going to be there in round 7. And they got him in round 7. He's a starter. He's one of the heroes for them in the Super Bowl. And it shows you that a team like that with Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid, and they'd already won a Super Bowl, how they still did not take a 7th round pick for granted. This is exactly one of the things I mentioned on a podcast about 2 months ago. I said, I'm tired of the late round picks just being guys who play special teams. Or maybe we can find something here. No, the Chiefs sounded like, and it's easy to say this in hindsight, I'll give you that. But it sounded like they absolutely knew what this kid was capable of. And they knew once they got him at house. Veach said after the first week of practice, they was like, he's going to be very good. And that all of their concerns were alleviated. And basically anything that they liked, it really magnified in practice. Sometimes I wonder if the Jaguars look at it the same way, because there are times when they draft people, especially late, it's like where they're just taking a flyer on a specific trait, as opposed to really getting a dude that can play and just answer and have him answer 1 or 2 questions once he gets into camp and the hits are for real. So you're going to need Trent Baalke at some point to have, I think I just did a combination of Baalke and Baalke, but you're going to need him to have that confidence and that sense of awareness and to understand this team and what they need. That's why I want a lot of Doug Pederson influence into the decision-making process. And I'm not saying that it's not that way, right? It could very well be the way that I'm absolutely describing it. And it could be totally, totally different. And it seems like I don't know what I'm talking about. But the reason why I say he is so important is because from this point, if you're going to take that posture where you're not spending money in free agency anymore as much as you used to, nowhere near the way that you used to. And it's all about drafting and developing. Yesterday, we mentioned about the continuity in the coaching staff that will help them be able to develop talent, because you're asking the guys to do the same thing year after year after year, and it eventually becomes a computer program. But now, this is going to be a situation where when the team limits itself as to how it's going to be able to retain people or get people, it's like you have free agency, you have the draft, and then you have obviously retaining your own guys, right? So they're going to just kind of like almost totally eliminate one of them and just supplement the team with free agency. Now, I mentioned yesterday also that this is okay. It's an okay strategy from my perspective, because the key positions, the Jaguars have them all covered already, and they did it in the draft. So they don't have a position where they have to go out at any point this year so far to spend a boatload of money on a premium position, because all of their premium positions are covered by folks that they have drafted. And so far, so good. At least there's room for improvement. I mean, if you say the Jaguars need anything, it's a left guard and a tight end, and you ain't going to break the bank for either one of those. So that's the point that I was making when I was asking everybody, where do you think the help is going to come from? The help is going to come from within. The help is going to come from within. The key is, can they get to the next step? First of all, they only been at this step 1 year. Can they at the very least, retain where they are? I think they can, because of Doug and Trevor. Now, to get to the next step, Doug and Trevor are going to turn around and look at Trent, and they're going to expect certain things from him, right? That's where I have to ask you, do you trust Trent Baalke? Because I'm going to name 3 teams for you. The Bills seem like they're stuck in quicksand right now after getting to that point 2 years ago, right? The Titans had a run of about 5 years before Jacksonville knocked them off of their pedestal, where they were right there, but the draft started to not go well. They drafted a kid that wasn't right upstairs and mentally and needed some help with mental health. They drafted another kid who was wanted by the cops, and I don't understand how the hell you do that. But then they started signing people that just didn't pan out for whatever reason. And eventually John Robinson lost his job. Go along with the fact that they had a quarterback that's not as good and has never been as good as Trevor Lawrence is right now, and Ryan Tannehill, and they were overpaying that position. But that window of opportunity closed because they couldn't take that next step that everyone assumes, because it seems so small. They made it to the AFC Championship game. They couldn't make it to the next step, and you know what happens? You slip and you fall, and now they look like a team that's at the bottom again, or close to the bottom. The Packers have had Aaron Rodgers, been knocking on the door of going back to the Super Bowl for a number of years, and were never able to do it. So when you think about it, you look at those teams. I would say the 49ers, but at least the 49ers went to the Super Bowl a couple of years back. But they might be another team that's sitting there like they're right there, and you think they've arrived. And then all of a sudden, they never seem to be able to take that last step, and they start slipping back. How do they prevent that from happening? I'm going to give you reasons to have faith and reasons to be skeptical of Trent Baalke, and I'll do that here in just a second on Locked On Jaguars. All right, rolling along here on Locked On Jaguars, where you make us your first listen, because it's your team every day, and we thank you for doing that. Also, hello to all the new people, the new listeners, and the new watchers on YouTube. We appreciate you immensely for making this podcast what it is. Thank you for all your kind words too. I've been reading a lot of comments, and I thank you for the mean ones too, honestly, because we need some comedy relief on our Locked On NFL DM. Sometimes I share the mean ones and we just crack up, because people will say something about me that's like totally the opposite of the way I am, and I think it's hilarious. But right now it's about the Jaguars. So far, so good with Trent Baalke, but can he take the next step? And considering that they're really, really going to depend on the draft, they're going to depend on 2 of the 3 legs of personnel more so than the other in free agency. I'm a firm believer you can't build, so I don't want to be a hypocrite. I'm a firm believer in, you don't build your team through free agency. You draft well. But I also believe that free agency can be an invaluable tool if done correctly. I think you need to do both. And I generally believe that teams that win all the time do both. Now, the outlier to that is the Patriots, or the outlier, because the Patriots are an anomaly. The Patriots did not draft well in their dynasty run. They did and they didn't. Here's what they did well. They picked, every now and then they get a Hall of Famer and he stay for 10 years. I'm talking about, well, Bruce getting Hall of Famer, but he's a great player. I'm talking about the Willie McGinnis, the Ty Laws, the Gronks, of course, Brady. They would get certain people, Richard Seymour, even though they let him go, and that was a big regret. But they would have guys, core guys that were Patriot types. Devin McCourty, okay? They would have guys that they draft that would be synonymous with their team for a decade or a decade and a half. You know what I'm saying? That ended up being great, great, great players. I mean, they hit home runs with some guys. But then they draft some dudes. It's like, what happened to him? Like Isaiah Wynn. Whatever happened to Isaiah Wynn, first round pick? They've had some picks that have been head scratchers. Mac Jones might be another one of those picks. But what they did do well was hit the home runs. And then they supplemented that they did a better job. They did as good a job of adding free agents that Joe Gibbs did with Washington back in the late 80s and early 90s. They know exactly the type of guy that they want and they need to supplement their team, and they go out and get them. And I think that's what Trent Baalke wants to do. He wants to draft well. I think so far he has in the early rounds. The later rounds leave a little bit to be desired, so that's a concern, because I said I was going to give you reason for faith and reason for skepticism. The Jaguars are going to have to, if you start saying that you're not going to use free agency as much and you're going to use draft and retention, then you better hit on some late round picks. Okay. Why don't you draft Isaiah Pacheco as opposed to Snoop Connor? Can you imagine a Pacheco? And I know this is cherry picking, and I don't want anybody to say, well, a whole bunch of teams passed up on Pacheco. He was a 7th round pick. Yeah, you know what? You're right. But guess who didn't pass up on him? The team that you're going to have to go through and play if you're ever going to get to that mountaintop where you want to be at. So the thing is, they're going to have to hit on these late round picks. They're early round picks. This might actually get easier for them because there's no rush to fill a need. And the other thing is, there's not as much scrutiny when you're drafting 24 as if you're drafting in the top 5 or number 1 or number 2. Like, people will give them hell about Trayvon Walker, especially if he doesn't take another step this year. And they'll go, man, they blew that, didn't he? Because with the number 1 pick, he's expected to end up being Myles Garrett or something, right? And if he never does that, even though he could have a fabulous career, if he never ends up that, people were going to always go, well, he didn't turn out. Like, look at a guy like Jerry Hughes. Jerry Hughes has had a great career. Jerry Hughes was a 1st round pick. And there are a lot of people that sat there when he got picked, and they'll always remember that he wasn't worth what he got picked, but technically he probably was, right? So when you're picking a little bit later in the draft, there's less scrutiny. You're probably not worried so much about overall need, but you're looking at a guy who specifically can help you do one thing, right? Like the McDonald kid out of Iowa State. I wouldn't be surprised if the Jaguars picked him. I think whoever they pick at 24 is going to be a bona fide contributor, because like I said, it eliminates that amount of pressure. So the reason to have faith in Trent Baalke is he's done really well. Anybody that does well, I think in the 2nd and 3rd round, you got to give them some credit that they're going to be able to pick okay when the team gets good, like the way they are now, because they're not getting that early round pick, right? The thing that they have to improve on is getting those late round gems and people that could really, really help this football team, because the teams that are playing late in February, that's exactly what they do. They find the type of help that they need. That help is inexpensive. Therefore, if you can find inexpensive help, and you start to let go of some older players, you don't have to venture back into free agency that you said you don't want to do anyway to get the type of help that you need. So the reasons for faith is he's done really good in the second and third round, and he's done really good with his traits. And it seems like he's on a real good page with Doug Pederson, as opposed to when Baalke was in San Francisco. It was going well, and him and Harbaugh just whatever, right? So I don't think that's the case here. The other thing to have faith in is always easier to build your team when you have a great quarterback, and they already have a great quarterback, and he seems to be on the same page as management. Therefore, you're going to have an opportunity to really, really do some things without worrying about the limitations of your quarterback when you do them. Like you draft differently for Trevor Lawrence than you do with Blake Bortles, because with Trevor Lawrence, obviously there's a better skill set and there's just more talent and you can do more things. The reasons for skepticism, is they're going to really have to learn how to hit on those late guys, and he hasn't shown a propensity to do that. And the only history that we have with Trent Baalke is having a great situation in San Francisco, all of a sudden just go haywire. So he has to overcome that. But one thing working in his favor that he said yesterday that is absolutely right is this. This is going to be a destination place for players. So just like New England in their heyday was able to go out and get guys, veterans, to come in and just be a part of a team, and maybe, I ain't saying take a discount, but don't try to break the bank at this point in their career. I think at some point the Jaguars, with maybe one more year of success, they're going to be able to attract and draw guys that are really trying to win a championship, that already got their money and just want to come in and play a role and want to come in here and win some games. So it's always about the money, but at the end of the day, you can also pay people a reasonable amount of money as long as the opportunity to win a championship presents itself. So Trent Baalke is going to have to get it done to get out of the doldrum, or to get out of the purgatory that this organization was in. It took a lot, and they did it in a short period of time because he hit on the coach and the quarterback. Now, from this point forward, that next little step, while it looks small, it is huge. So hopefully he's the man for the job, because they're setting this up that it is going to depend on the unknown, and the unknown is the draft, and the draft is his wheelhouse. He's going to have to make sure that if you're more dependent on that part to get you over this next hump, then you have to do it better while picking later. Make sure you check in and tune in to Locked On Jaguars, because we'll be here throughout the week, the rest of the week for the combine. I'm going to try to catch up with Jacksonville.com beat writer Demetrius Harvey to have him on later on this week. We'll do the best we can. But until then, you guys take care of each other and keep watching the combine, because it's on this week. Take care of each other, and we'll see you here next time.